Good afternoon, I'm Milton Walker with the Midday News. Special welcome if you are watching on onespotmedia.com. Jamaica's recorded 80 new COVID-19 cases and 1 additional death. The total number of cases now stands at 3,183 and 34 COVID-19 related deaths. As a result, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced stricter measures to contain the spread of the virus.
An 83-year-old woman is the latest person to die from COVID-19 complications. It's understood that she had diabetes and hypertension, which are 2 of the underlying conditions that make the elderly particularly vulnerable to the virus. The number of deaths from the disease now stands at 34. And of the 34 COVID-19 related deaths, 19 were persons aged 70 years and over. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says most of the COVID-19 related deaths are persons who fall into this category. Therefore, he has imposed stricter measures to contain the spread of COVID-19.
The gathering limit is being reduced from 20 persons to 15. Persons in public spaces will not be allowed to gather in groups exceeding 15 persons as of Tuesday, September 8, 2020, ending Tuesday, September the 22nd, 2020. Persons 70 years and older will be required to stay home, but will be allowed to leave home once each day for the necessities of life, which means that they can leave home to go to the closest practicable location for the purposes of obtaining food, medical supplies, conducting financial transactions, overseeing their place of business, attending a place of worship, or physical exercise.
The curfew times have also changed. Effective Tuesday evening, curfews will commence from 8 p.m. to 5 the following morning. This will continue until September 22, when the measures will be reviewed. In the meantime, Mr. Holness wants Jamaicans to take personal responsibility in order to avoid contracting the virus. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says community transmission of COVID-19 is an indication of a surge. Mr. Holness explains the recent surge should make it clear that there is no room for complacency.
Given that we are now in the community transmission phase, in our daily interactions, you have to assume that everyone you come into contact with could be carrying the virus. This means you cannot let your guard down. You have to wear your masks properly, covering the nose and mouth.
He reiterated the modeling that showed up to 1.5 million Jamaicans could get the virus and urged persons to be careful and follow the protocols. Prince Moore, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, Associate Professor at the School of Public Health at the University of Technology, Dr. Alverston Bailey, is suggesting fines for breaches of the COVID-19 prevention measures.
This can be done by creating a COVID-19 municipal police force in order to assure that this reinforcement takes place. I'm recommending that more surveillance of all citizens now in quarantine be done using electronic surveillance bracelets. I also recommend that they ramp up COVID-19 testing with the assistance of private sector labs to establish the true scale of the pandemic, and they should target the elderly, healthcare workers, and the vulnerable.
And Dr. Christopher Tufton, the health minister, says with the country now seeing community transmission of the virus, changes will be made to how tests are done for the disease. He also said a new marketing campaign will be developed to bring more awareness to the disease.
Over the next week or so, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, working with its partners within the private sector, the Cabinet, the Prime Minister, will be unveiling a series of new protocols that will govern the community transmission phase. This phase comes with it in terms of best practices, and this is guided by WHO PAHO and our own unique circumstances as a country. A slight adjustment or an adjustment in the approach towards testing, adjustment to the approach towards workplace and the protocols around workplace. And what we're doing now, we're actively engaged in assessing and laying that out and we'll make that public to the country. In addition to that, of course, there has to be a communications program that helps the country, all of us, to appreciate what community transmission means, what all our respective role would represent, and hopefully we'll get the buy-in of all stakeholders.
Some registered taxi operators are crying foul after they were turned away by the Finance Ministry after their status could not be verified in order to benefit under the government's COVID-19 relief program. They're appealing for financial assistance. O'Shane Masters reports.
President of the Jamaica Association of Transport Owners and Operators, JATU, Louis Barton, says the government's announcement yesterday of the return of the work-from-home arrangement will be a major setback. Mr. Barton made it clear that the Taxi Association supports measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
If it's even a bottle of sanitizer, nothing, absolutely nothing was done to help relieve our plight, right? But and the plight also comes not only from the work from order, but when you're cutting back by one passenger, that's a 25% reduction in our income, right? We also understand that, but give us something to supplement it.
He says some of JATU's members have not benefited from the supporting employees with the transfer of cash, set cash component of the government's relief program. In May, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark had said a group including taxi operators would have to go through an eligibility verification process to receive a one-time grant of $25,000.
The operators were supposed to get $25,000 and the drivers get $10,000. I have members right now who have their legal papers showing that they are operators, but they get a letter or get notice from the Ministry of Finance saying that they are not legally registered to operate. Now, and in addition to that, when some of the operators get that letter and they tell their friends say, well, okay, that isn't where we're going, so we won't bother with it. Let us leave it alone.
But the taxi operators will again lose money as the government called on them to play their part in containing the spread of COVID-19. The country, which is in community spread, has now recorded over 3,000 cases of the respiratory illness. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
We now take a break on Midday News. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Continuing the news. A senior member of the Jamaica Labour Party says the administration will have to tighten the screws on corruption to improve governance in its second consecutive term in office. Desmond McKenzie says the Andrew Holness-led government will try not to repeat mistakes made in the previous term.
We have convinced the majority of voters that our policy, the performance of the government, is far superior than what we have seen. And all that we probably have to do is to tighten up on some of the loose areas, some of the mistakes that was made in the past. We try not to repeat those mistakes, and then
what kind of mistakes?
Well, I mean, many mistakes have been made. There's no system or government that there are not mistakes that have been made, and those mistakes speak for themselves. It's out there in the public domain. The government is cognizant of that, and all that will do is strengthen our capacity to ensure that we build on the foundation which we started.
Member of Parliament-elect for Central Manchester, Rhoda May Crawford, is praising the Jamaican political system for the number of women elected as members of Parliament. Ms. Crawford says Jamaica is leading in gender balance in leadership.
We're often the victim of smear campaigns. As soon as a female attempts to seek leadership at the highest level, there are all sorts of talk of how did she get there. Females have to contend with the domestic realities and family obligation and balancing, and of course we have to contend with the stigma of society's view of the role of women. So to see so many females entering the parliament, 14 from the JLP and 4 from the PNP, I think it's something that requires celebration. I think Jamaica is well ahead of many of the Caribbean territories.
Ms. Crawford says women MPs on both sides of the aisle should seek to motivate other young women to enter politics.
Both the 14 from the JLP and the 4 from the PNP, I hope that we will serve as real inspiration to other young females who have a genuine thank Jamaica. I thank the leader of the Jamaica Labour Party and the entire leadership for having the confidence in electing females, and I want to thank the outgoing leader of the PNP for his confidence in the females he too had fielded in the election.
The issue of retirement age for politicians is once again on the national agenda. A retired member of parliament is suggesting both political parties do more to foster youth entering parliament and transitioning older MPs into retirement. Dr. Omar Davis believes time has come for several MPs on both sides to call time on their political careers.
Do you think it's time for some of them to step aside?
Oh, yeah, I certainly do. Several are older than me.
What are your thoughts on that, though? Should there be like a retirement age? For
No, I don't think, that sort of thing is pressure from within the party. I'm not talking about the JLP per se. Within the party, there should be clear attempts made to foster youth.
Dr. Davis refused to call names on record, but says he's concerned that some politicians do not seem to know when to go.
You can't have persons in 2020 being relevant who were relevant 40 years ago.
Something fundamental.
Yes, there's something fundamentally deficient.
Residents in Trinityville, St. Thomas are calling on the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation to address a long-standing drainage problem affecting the community. Since the passing of Hurricane Laura, some residents have not returned to their homes. They are fearful because of the lingering impact caused by heavy rain from that storm, which affected the island over 2 weeks ago. The residents say urgent assistance is needed.
Word of mouth, no do this thing. Action. So if you decide, if you put a man in power, you put a man in power for work. You put a man in for talk. So if you don't mean action, action will come from the citizens and the community and the people them. So we need help right now. Help right now. No means tomorrow and next week. No. So we serious with it.
This house is built on top of a drain which results in flooding when it rains.
2 trench was there. So the tent them must overflow and the water flood out my house. It come from straight off of the hill and come down and flood me out and it go down to Miss Winnie. It is very bad up there.
However, workmen are in the area conducting a drain cleaning exercise. We go overseas. As children return to school in Spain, the country is facing an alarming surge in coronavirus infections. Some private schools are building new facilities to accommodate in-person learning, but public schools are struggling to cope. We have more from the CNN.
The British Council School of Madrid is hammering out new facilities to meet COVID-19 guidelines for the start of a new school year like no other. Head of school Mercedes Hernandez shows us the breezy new cafeteria extension. Indoor-outdoor areas for smaller classes with better ventilation. And the playground is now a rainbow-colored labyrinth of dividers to keep classes in their bubbles to prevent the virus from spreading. But there is a stark difference between Madrid's private schools that have the means to deliver safe classrooms and the bleak public schools across town. The virus is spreading fastest in the poorest areas of Madrid, but public schools here simply do not have the resources to add more space, more classes, or more teachers. Now, the government has finally promised to fast-track more funds. Even so, little of that is going to be ready before school start in just a few days' time.
In sports, the Jamaica Tallowers have been eliminated from the 2020 Caribbean Premier League after going down by 9 wickets to the unbeaten Trinbago Knight Riders in their semi-final match a short while ago at the Brian Lara Stadium. Lendell Simmons led the way. Earlier, the Tallowers were restricted to 107 for 7 after being sent into bat. Nkrumah Bonner top scored with 41 while captain Rodman Powell made 33. Akil Hussain took 3 for 14 and Kyrie Pear 2 for 29. Guyana Amazon Warriors take on the St. Lucia Zooks in the other semi-final. That starts at 4:30. And that's the Midday News. I'm Milton Walker. Join us again at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.